Hey everybody, Josh here. Just wanted to take a moment here to make a video about how I lay out data on dashboards. I'm up early for the product hunt launch, which is going a little slower than I expected because we didn't get featured. So I'm going to take that time instead to do something that I really enjoy. I find these kind of therapeutic. So here we go. This is a card layout example, and I'm going to just be talking about how I put data onto a card, how that is kind of important in showing us why we need context for our data, and how data is more of a narrative than it is purely a set of metrics. I'll get into all of that a little bit more here. So what you see here is what I call a card. When I say card layout and me using a card layout, this is what I mean. A card layout is, think about it as like a little unit, and on that unit there are a set of metrics and visualizations that kind of tell a story, one cohesive piece. This is useful for me because it kind of forces me to get into the zone of thinking in terms of narratives as opposed to in terms of metrics. I have to think about, hey, what is the insight here? What's the insight next to it? What's the insight next to it? How do they all tie together? Similar to the way you might structure an essay, it kind of forces you to structure your thinking around the metrics that are going onto the page. So when I do these cards, the steps are they're fairly straightforward, and it's something anyone can do. So the first step is just tell people what is on the card. I know that seems obvious, but people really seem to skip this step and overcomplicate it. Plain language, nothing fancy, no acronyms, no corporate jargon, and a little bit of explanation. Concise and short so that people actually take the time to read it, but explain to people what's there. You might understand what monthly revenue is, but somebody else might not actually. And that extra little bit of context is going to help them and allow them to use your dashboard in a more meaningful way. But more importantly, somebody who might think they already know, they might not. They might be making some assumptions, and spelling it out for them can really help in those situations. So you've put the name of what's on the page on there. You've explained what's on the page. Now actually put the metric on the page. One thing I always say is big important metrics deserve big important fonts and prominent placement. So if this is about revenue, put the revenue somewhere obvious and big so people jump there first. That's our starting point, right? As I'm designing this card, I started out by just having revenue on the page. That's where I started. And then I had to think from that starting point about everything else that goes on the page. So the first thing is, hey, if it's something that is a metric that takes place over time, revenue, monthly revenue, if it's a time series, show some kind of time series chart, whether that's a bar chart over time, whether it's a trend line, whether it's just a line chart, doesn't matter. Put something in there so that the person has an anchoring point and then can go and see, hey, where are we relative to where we've been? This is kind of the base of like most visualization. You're going to have a metric. That metric's going to be set for a certain time period, but you're going to want to also show that metric across other time periods, and then you're also going to want to split that metric by different dimensions. And what that means in non-jargony terms is you have metrics, you have a number like revenue, and that number maybe is made up of different components that you want to show. That number maybe is higher or lower or on par with past performance, so you want to show that. It's just starting to think about that metric in context. So what do I call all that? I call it anticipating the question. When somebody looks at revenue, what is the next question that they're going to ask, right? So for example, in this here, I said, okay, well, I know they're going to want to see it compared to last month. And maybe that's specific to a business. Maybe in your business, you actually want to compare it to the same month last year. But I know they're going to want to see it last month. I also want to know that they're going to want to see if it's online or in-store. So here's an example of online in-store over time, or online in-store broken down as a donut chart. And maybe I also know that they're going to want to see it compared to a revenue goal, because the revenue performance doesn't actually matter unless I see it in context to our goal set for the month. All of these things really are about getting yourself in the headspace of the person looking at the dashboard and trying to kind of guess what they're going to ask next. Anticipate that and put it in from go. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. This went out in the newsletter, this template. I'll have a link to the newsletter below. And let me know if you have any questions. I'd love to chat with you all. Thanks.